I affirm, the United States is justified in intervening in the internal political processes of other nations to attempt to stop human rights abuses. In this debate, the NEG has the burden of proof that the U.S. is in no way or form justified in intervening on the behalf of human rights abuses victims in other countries. Both multilateral and unilateral options include intervention by the United States, as mentioned in the resolution. I'll provide some definitions before I continue. The human rights abuses mentioned in the resolution are, by context, an infringement upon the basic and natural rights that every governed human has by the government of the state. These always occur inside the state and are not within the control of any bordering or nearby countries. These abuses can be, but are not limited to, unjust imprisonment, genocide, mass killings, and legal rights denial. The government, not any individual, causes such infringements. The humanitarian intervention is the use of military force by one or more states within the jurisdiction of another without its permission to protect innocent people from violence by the target state's government. I would like to uphold the value of justice throughout this debate, as any immoral action should be accordingly responded to, both hypothetically in this debate and in the real world. Justice provides for fair treatment of all individuals, a policy that the U.S. should uphold when aiding people who are having their natural rights taken and abused. My standard is global egalitarianism, because although material wealth carries weight in society, at a basic level, every human deserves the same exact rights as the next person. Under this moral constraint, justice is dealt equally. All women, children, and men are treated the same, with the same value to the world. With global egalitarianism, the human has a benefit of equality and justice in the way of equal freedoms provided. I will have three contentions. The first being that the government that violates the human rights violates the social contract, therefore losing the right to deny external interference. My second contention will be how the United States is in the unique position to help these citizens, and my third will be how it is the duty of the nations to be duty of the nations that are able to do so. My first contention is that the government that violates the citizens' rights violates the social contract with their citizens as well. Within this contention, a conclusion is reached that a government governs with the consent of its people, and in exchange for the government's protection, the people are limited from certain actions, such as the ability to rape, murder, and pillage. This contract is only upheld while the government respects the citizens' natural rights. These are reasonable limitations, as we can all agree. But an essential part of the system is that the people have certain rights that the government may not limit or take away their basic human rights. One leads to the right to assembly, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, the right to happiness, most importantly, the right to life. In the case of genocide and the like, most if not all of these rights are not only being violated but also ignored. When these freedoms are violated, the external force must correct the government culpable for the atrocity, as they evidently will or cannot rectify their wrongs on their own. Later on in my discourse, I shall speak of how the United States is deemed uniquely capable to do so, but for the moment, I shall only say that the government is, in question, cannot stabilize on its own. This is shown to be evident in North Korea. Since the beginning of Kim Il-sung's regime, the people of North Korea have had a tenacious lack of basic rights that we take for granted, such as the freedom of speech, freedom of press, and freedom of assembly. They have not been self-corrected as of the present day. Far from it. They deter other nations from interfering with these abuses. This example of a human rights abuse to the extreme displays a situation in which external action is justified. Such situation must be intervened with, because without humanitarian intervention there will be no justice and global egalitarianism will not be upheld. My second argument, as I mentioned in my previous contention, is that the U.S. is in a unique position to aid those countries in need of humanitarian intervention. The U.S. has developed into the most influential, powerful nation. Economically, politically, and socially, the United States is still ahead of every country that has developed its capabilities. Even within the recent recession, the U.S. has kept its lead. In the hegemonic stability theory, one strongly dominant international political actor, in this case the United States, creates collectively desired results for all the other countries in the international system. Thus, all countries benefit from the responsibility of the most powerful nation, the United States. The United States' true responsibility as a superpower is to mediate and arbitrate the affairs of moral abuse so that they may intervene on behalf of all peoples who are having their basic rights abused by their negligent governments. Its leadership would solve problems that cannot be solved by other states independently. And in the case of multilateral intervention, the hegemonic nation is the one spearheading the intervention. The U.S. hegemony shows one of the affirmative's undeniable truths. We are so powerful we can influence every state in a variety of ways. One of these ways is through economic influence, and this allows for economic sanctions, as shown in the excerpt from International Economic Sanctions, Improving the Haphazard U.S. Legal Regime. Detailed studies suggest that sanctions have been successful in some situations. For example, U.S. economic sanctions helped to topple Haiti's Duvalier in 1986, Uganda's Idi Amin in 1979, and Chile's Allende in 1973. The sanctions strategy influence helped on several occasions, as shown in the excerpt. This is a vital way that the U.S. has a powerful influence on other nations. Also, because of our military might, we can make a rapid intervention entry, liberating possibly endangered people. Although the loss of life that may result from such an act is regrettable, the application of the justice value shows how, in all fairness, the life sacrifice are worth sacrificing in order to save the people from the collective suffering or deaths that may have occurred from not changing a state's internal affairs. In the long run, the prevention of these deaths will be much more valuable than the sacrifices made to achieve peace. The United States is much more qualified to maintain this position, and these measures are infinitely reasonable under the value of premise of justice, and this also serves the standard of global egalitarianism, as this is the most effective way to stop human rights abuses. The United States is the only country powerful enough to consistently interfere on behalf of victims of abuses, and the United States can uphold global egalitarianism that the international world needs to keep stability and equality. My last contention is one of duty. It is our duty to uphold global egalitarianism and justice as a whole. Our nation is, as previously stated, in a position to help other countries by humanitarian intervention. However, it is not only true that we are able to do so, but by being able, we inherit the duty to help those countries' peoples in needs. That is to say, we as a superior power have the responsibility of an arbitrator. We should take the stance that the UN was supposed to take. In this excerpt from the report on the panel of the United Nations Peace Operations of the General Assembly, the United States was founded to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war. Over the last decade, the United Nations has failed to meet the challenge and can do no better today. Significant institutional change and increased financial support is necessary in order for the United Nations to execute critical peacekeeping and peace-building tasks the member states assigned to it in the coming months and years. As can be seen in this excerpt, the United Nations is clearly not capable of meeting its standards. The United States must, by default, as the sole state strong enough to keep international peace as well as the stability of individual states, the UN, unable to keep standards within reach, must be eliminated as a plausible solution to these types of humanitarian issues, unless the United States is shown to be a leader in the international actions. By combining the United States' duty to its hegemonic nature and international cooperation, both unilateral and multilateral options can be fully considered as possible options for the United States to justly intervene in the internal political processes of other nations in order to stop human rights abuses. With this responsibility held in mind, I urge you to vote for the affirmative.
30 seconds, Pro Tem.